All right, so we're going to spend the next hour doing site reviews. The week before, we put up a form just on my personal blog and did one tweet and said, hey, submit your sites if you'd like to get your site reviewed. I was thinking maybe 20, 25 people would sign up, put their sites up there. We got 500 sites. So we're going to spend about 6 seconds per site. No, not really. So we went through, and I pulled out some fun ones. And we're just going to look at them. And by the way, all of us are going to stay around a little bit afterwards. So if you want to get, like a little bit of one-on-one advice, stuff like that, we'll all stick around a little while. Let me introduce my colleagues. We have Greg Grothaus, who's also on my team. Tiffany Lane, also on my team. And Vanessa Fox, former Googler.
Not on Matt's team.
But author of Marketing in the Age of Google, which is a very good book. OK, so let's go ahead and start jumping into it. The very first site that we got submitted was this one. Phoenician stone since 1943. OK, the main reason I wanted to show this site was because so many people submitted, oh, tear us down, we're awful, our SEO is horrible, right? This site has no text on it, OK? It looks like it has text on it. It has no text. Oh, each resurrected piece of, no, that's not text. Resonates with over 1,000 years of humanity. No, that's not text. Where's the text? There's like Phoenician stone. That's it.
Yeah, there is text on the page. It's in the title tag.
Yes,
and exactly. He wants to rank for antique fireplaces.
Yes.
And his title tag says Phoenician stone.
Right. So here's the tricky bit. Literally the only text on this page is in what are called meta keywords. That's just about the only place that Google doesn't index that text. OK? We even did a video because people will tend to sue each other and say like, oh, you copied the name of my business. I'm Grecian Stone, and how dare you put Grecian Stone in my Phoenician Stone website? And so people get really up in arms about this. And what we discovered is, believe it or not, some people will stuff keywords on a web page. Hard to believe. I know. Your eyes will be opened by the end of this session. And so we don't trust the meta keywords tag. Now, if you look at the rest of the text on this page, you'll find that there is none, right? So that's a little bit of a problem. So the simple advice is put some text on your page. That's, so we'll start out and we'll build on that. First off, you got to have some text on your page. Now, I'm being a little bit harsh, but there's a lot of stuff that this guy can do. For example, his title tag, as Vanessa mentioned, is Phoenician stone. If you're looking to buy an antique fireplace or reclaimed biblical stone. Has anybody ever searched for this stuff? Any of these words? Antique terracotta jars? Maybe not? No antique. Oh yeah, we have one antique terracotta jar specialist over here. She's a real fan.
It's her site.
Yeah, it might be their site. Since 1943. So the trick is, we have a free tool called the Adwords keyword tool. There's a ton of free tools out there. If you search for keyword tool, just click number 1. You can type in like antique fireplace, and you'll get related words that people type. So tip number 1, put text on your page. Tip number 2, think about what users will type when searching for your services, and put those words on the page. Because I guarantee you, it's OK, I've preloaded everything. By the way, this Wi-Fi is powered by Bluetooth, so we have a keyboard over here, and I can't imagine anything would go wrong with that, right?
No, these are loading great here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just switch it to the other box. It's totally fine. That's why I preloaded all my tabs. On the other hand, people did get free phones today, so that kind of balances out. That's, use that for good, not for evil. OK, so I think we've made enough fun of Phoenician stone. And really, there's not fun to be made of Phoenician stone so much as there's some education here, which is, number 1, put text on the page. Number 2, think about the words that users are really going to type. OK, another one, rodsbot.com. First off, if you just heard the word rodsbot.com, what do you think they specialize in? What kind of a website do you think rodsbot.com is? It sounds like robotic sex toys to me. I don't know. But in fact, rodsbot.com is weird sites on Google Earth. That's kind of cool. In fact, it's kind of addictive. 20 hours ago, this guy's marking where some marijuana was, so maybe all the sheriffs are keeping an eye on this. Here's this face. Evidently, it's somewhere in Turkey. Here's a ghost plane. Whoa, Oceanic Flight 814 or whatever. So the question is, how do we make this site rank higher? Well, I'll put the question to you guys. What's wrong with this page? I'll give you a hint. It sort of relates to the last site. There's not a lot of text on this page. And in fact, the person who asked about it understood that. They said, I'm having problems getting textual content. So how do we solve this? Descriptions, yes. You can write the content yourself. Now let's do the jujitsu where you try to make other people do the work for you. Alt text, yes, but you're still doing the work yourself. User reviews and comments, thank you. User-generated content. Why do the work when you can get someone else to do the work for you, right? So in some cases, all you have to do is add the ability to add comments, and people will, they'll show up and they'll leave the comments for you. So they'll say, whoa, that's a weird face in Turkey. That plane looks like it's not even real. And suddenly you'll get all these sort of keywords, and you haven't done the work. So that's one simple way to do it. So level 1 of understanding is, okay, I'll type it in. Level 2 is, I'll open it up so that other people can type it in for me. And then probably you want to think about throwing it up on Twitter, Facebook, something like that, promote it a little bit.
Yeah, because what are people searching for where they would get to the site?
Yeah, that's tough.
Like he may want to even have a blog where he talks about, thinks about things that people are searching for that would care about interesting geological phenomenon or something. Because I don't think anyone's going to be searching for turkey face. I mean, maybe.
They're probably not going to search for Rodsbot either. No. So, or if they are, they want something different than what this guy's offering.
Yeah, I was really disappointed when I got here.
It's like I was looking for a different kind of Rodsbot. So yeah, you want to probably, you can see a little bit of text down here, and in fact, it's a little weird. As fast as a rods, rodsbot.com. I don't think of rods like cheetahs, turtles with rockets on them, greased lightning, rods. I don't think of rods as like, whoa, they're super fast. Oh my gosh. So, and it's not like the domain is so great that you couldn't come up with a slightly different, domain name or brand it a little bit differently. Now, I'm being a little bit rough, but that's partly because this guy has multiple sites. He's actually got like 5 or 6 sites. And one piece of advice I would like to leave you with is if you can put more work into a single site as opposed to not very much work into 50 sites, that can make a really big difference. Because sometimes you can build up one really good site instead of like 5 or 6 that are not quite as finished as they could be. Does that make sense?
Matt,
okay. Yeah.
What do you think of the Friends page? I can't actually get it to load.
Yeah. Friends page. I believe this is, a couple of these might be his sites. Yeah. You want to always think about your linking strategy. These things don't especially seem like news websites about internet, TV, movies, and games seen from France don't seem to have a whole lot to do with Google Earth weird places. On the other hand, weird face in Turkey, that's kind of cool. Okay, so next up, androidandme.com. What's the very first thing you notice whenever you're looking at this page? Grab the Tiffany saying,
where's the content?
Yeah.
Can't see any content.
Right. So on a lot of browsers, the actual content is going to be below the fold. Right? And that's okay. It's okay to show a banner ad. That's not the end of the world. Hey, I hear this is a pretty good product. It's not bad to show cool things that are being, showing up. But maybe you don't need this username and password. Maybe you don't need 2 levels of these things. Because if you think about it, if you have to start clicking down below to get to the content, not everybody's going to click through. Now, let me give a little bit of love. Whenever you view source, I don't know if you guys can see it, but they are running WordPress version 2.9.2. Does anybody know what the current version of WordPress is? At last I checked, it was 2.9.2. Now, it may have been updated, in the last 36 hours or something like that. But this means that they're running a current version of WordPress. If you run WordPress, and I do, and I love it, you have to keep it up to date. In fact, I would recommend using an htaccess file to whitelist the IP addresses that can access your WP admin directory. And not to harsh on WordPress, because it also applies to Drupal, Joomla, all this sort of stuff. If you run a content management system, which is a stock content management system, and that's usually a good idea because it comes built in with relatively good SEO, WordPress is great as far as SEO goes. But you have to keep it patched. Otherwise, you'll get hacked. So by using WordPress, Android and Me has actually done a fairly good job of making sure that SEO is in good shape. For example, look at this particular thing. Froyo is now officially Android 2.2 highlights, right? Good keyword text. It's not spammy. It's not stuffing. It's right there in the URL. That also applies in the title. Little things like URL keywords in the title and the URL can make a big difference. And WordPress is just built to handle that naturally. So that's really, really good. Now here's one thing that's kind of strange. If in Chrome I hover over something, I'll see the title. So the title of Android and Me is Android and Me. Is that the optimal title? No. So if you view source on Android and Me, Android and Me covers all the latest Android news, phone launches, app reviews, software updates, Android hacks, and phone accessories. Great. Perfect. Put a little bit of that in the title, right? And you don't want to put all of that in the title, but you can say the latest Android news and reviews, right? Stuff like that can make an actual difference on how stuff ranks. So I have to give a little bit of hard time for the title just because in most ways, Android and Me is actually in pretty good shape. And it was sort of fun because they were like, yeah, beat us up, give us a hard time. And I was like, you're actually doing pretty well. There's not that much to beat you up for. Now, one thing I would say is how many people, just at the drop of a hat, know the difference between Android and Me, Fandroid, Andronica, Androlib, AppBrain? How many people know the difference between all those? Okay, a lot more of you actually know the difference between all of those. But they have the tendency to blend together a little bit. Think about a site like TechCrunch. MG Siegler writes these crazy headlines. I can pretty much read a headline and know MG Siegler wrote it. So you want to think about branding. You want to think about how can you differentiate yourself. How can I stand out from the crowd a little bit? And if everybody's got Android communities or Android Central or Android whatever, that's a little harder to do. Now, it's good for people who are searching for Android, but you don't have to have Android in the name of your site. Boy Genius Report. People heard of Boy Genius Report? It's a pretty known mobile site. Doesn't say mobile phone anywhere in there, but it's actually a little more brandable because it stands out from the crowd. It doesn't just have the same kind of name as everybody else. So when you're thinking about buying a new domain name, it doesn't have to be Android whatever, or cheapest car, online, rentals, discount, stuff like that. It can be something brandable, so that's something to think about. Oh, yeah, somebody submitted Google.com. And their comment was, I would like to know the backlinks of it. Okay. They want to know the backlinks of Google.com. Well, luckily I prepared. In 1-point font, I printed out the backlinks of Google.com. These are the links from all the sites that begin with AAA. Now, I'm kind of joking, right? It turns out Adobe and Google and Apple, these are some of the most linked to sites on the web. But the reason for that is because they offer something of compelling value. So again, distinguishing or differentiating yourself from the crowd. What can you do that is so excellent, that is so cool that people want to link to your site? Then you get this kind of level of links. You don't have to fight for each individual one. You're not swimming upstream. You're sort of coasting downhill with the wind behind you. So, joking on Google.com. But now, if people wanted to follow along, the next site we're going to look at is Surprises Galore. Do not go to this site. Stop. I see you. I see you. You're going to type enter. Don't do it. Don't go there.
Let him do it.
No. Why would you not want to go to Surprises Galore? Well, I saw this. By the way, whoever submitted a bondage site for a public URL review, funny, but I'm not going to show that, right? So I saw the URL Surprises Galore, and I'm like, is this another bondage site? Let's find out. So I click on Surprises Galore, and it's a completely normal gourmet gift basket, all this sort of stuff. So why do I want to highlight this site? Well, if you view source on Surprises Galore, there's this right here. And it's a little hard to see, but it's holacianweb/oo.php. And I apologize that I can't scroll it up further, but it's the very bottom of the page. But I can click on that, and that will bring up this page. This is a script written in PHP sort of stuff all the way at the bottom of one page, and it's setting and doing cookies. And then it's doing this thing, ruboidmon 64 TLD. Anybody guess what's going on with surprises galore? You all got it. Surprises galore has been hacked. Okay? It's built such that the first time you visit the site, you get one of these scary fake malware warnings. Like your computer has been infected with a virus. Here, pay us $99.95 and we'll take it off for you. And click here to disinfect. And in fact, when you click to disinfect, you're actually installing the virus, and then you will have to pay $99.95 or reformat your hard drive to get rid of it. So this goes back to the fact that out of the 500, I didn't look at all 500 sites. I looked at about 40. That, rough odds would mean like 1 or 2% of all websites are hacked. Now, I'm not going to give any names, but there are 2 Google employees, none of these people, but actual Google speakers at Google I/O, who the very first time I met them, I Googled them. I said, oh, type in their name, and they were selling Viagra. It's like, that's kind of weird. I mean, that's a strange side business for a Googler. You don't want to sell Viagra, right? And it turned out they were hacked, and they didn't know it. So a really scary trend that's happening, I'll just give you like the projection 1 year out. Personal computers are getting better about security. Right? Vista, Windows 7, actually pretty good about making sure you don't get hacked, don't get infected. So where are the hackers going to go? They're going to go to your web server, right? So if you haven't done security audits, if you use stock software, if you haven't patched it, they will hack it. And they'll do stuff like this. I've seen Donald Trump's site hacked. I've seen Al Gore's site hacked. All sorts of stuff. And they get sneakier and sneakier. They do things like they only show the hacked site when you come from a Google search results page. Or they'll only show you the malware warning once. All sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah, the best one was when I got hacked.
You got hacked?
Yeah, a couple years ago because I hadn't updated WordPress.
Yeah.
And when I went to the site, it looked fine, but when the Googlebot went to the site, it was full of Viagra.
Yes. Now there are tools to help you with that. Vanessa, do you want to tell about any of the tools to help with that?
I would love to tell them about some of the tools available. How many of you have heard of a tool called Google Webmaster Central?
Please raise your hand. Please raise your hand. Even if you haven't, please raise your hand. Everyone should.
Just pretend.
You are literally negligent if you have not registered your site at Google Webmaster
Yeah, so
Central.
this is available, as many of you know, at google.com/webmasters. And one of the awesome things that it does is if you log in and you verify your site, it will let you know if your site has malware on it. So, and it gives you all the steps of what to do about it. Because Google will, if they see that your site has malware, they'll block it in the search results so that they're not sending searchers there as well. And so, yeah, so this is a great tool for a variety of reasons, but certainly the malware detection is one of them. And I don't know who did that tool, but gosh.
Vanessa was the product manager on Webmaster Central before she left Google. There's a lot of great.
I also got hacked.
Who got hacked?
I did.
You got hacked?
I also didn't keep my WordPress up to date.
Okay. Greg, have you been hacked yet?
Have you ever done
that?
I also, one thing that Webmaster Tools has is it tells you your most common keywords on your site. So under normal circumstances, when I look at Webmaster Tools, I see photos, photography, Tiffany. These are good words. Then when I was hacked, I was checking Webmaster Tools, and I see Viagra and see how that is not supposed to be in my content. So.
Yeah, so that's one way. Another way that report is helpful is I've been in site reviews like this where people get really mad, right? They're like, the tool's totally wrong. I looked at this report. It said my site's about Viagra. I don't have my Viagra on my site at all. And it's because they have, a guest book or they have comments that they don't moderate, and so there's been so much spam that's been added and they have no idea and they've just let it go. One was this guy that had this guest book that it must have been, it was like 5 miles long, 1 page of guest book just full of Viagra spam. Yeah. So I think that's a great report for this kind of thing.
In addition to that, prior to getting hacked, one of the things you can do is Google released this tool a few months back called Skipfish. And Skipfish is something you can point at your development server before you launch it on the real world and let it run and crawl your website and look for vulnerabilities that you've created as a developer or via third-party apps or anything like that. So check it out. It's all one word, Skipfish. And that's pulling up now.
And if you haven't heard of google.com/webmasters, it's at google.com/webmasters. Pretty easy to remember. One more tool in that tool set that I'll mention is called Fetch as Googlebot. And what that does is you prove that you own your site. You have to like, either edit a meta tag or make a DNS entry, something to show that, yeah, you really do own that site. That way you can't claim whitehouse.gov and start doing weird stuff with whitehouse.gov. But once you've proven that you own that site, you can tell Googlebot, and it's something like 50 times a week, come fetch any page on my site and show me exactly what you saw, including any redirects, any server headers, anything like that. So if you've been hacked, you can say, okay, Google, fetch the page, show it to me. Am I still hacked? Dang it, I still am. Okay, fix it up, patch the servers again, fetches Googlebot. Okay, now I'm clean. So it's a very handy tool. I would recommend everybody check that out. It's free, all that sort of stuff. Okay, not to dwell on hack stuff too much, so I'll let surprises galore off the hook now. Okay, so now the next site that I wanted to look at is called the Hookup.
All right.
I love these URLs. And the URL is, I believe it's...
Thehookupsite.com?
Yes, thehookupsite.com. Anybody want to guess what the hookup site does? It gives you the hookup on the best car audio.
Woohoo!
Wait a second, what were you guys thinking? Get your head out of the gutter. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is an interesting site. It's a local site in Kansas. But the problem of being on the web spam team is once you see spam and you learn how to recognize it, you can't unsee it, right? So here's what looks like a pretty good CD MP3 player. And then it's got a list of part stuff and the owner's manual. And then it's got white marine speakers. What's going on here? And then it's got car component speakers. This seems a little strange. Is this the sort of stuff that regular people normally write on their blog? Not so much. So what this guy is actually doing is he's taking press releases and just syndicating on his site. The problem is that's not really original content, so you won't tend to rank very highly. So you can put up a website, right? Props to anybody who wants to put up a website. But if you don't have something original to show, it usually tends not to rank as highly. Now, there is some original content on this site. He has a photo gallery, and I have to say, this is a really blinged out 83 Chevy. 24-inch dubs, or is 24-inch dubs or just dubs? I always get that mixed up. I don't know. So it's kind of neat. They say, submit your site, and we'll pimp it out and stuff like that. So this is a real site. There's a real person, Shawnee, Kansas, who's looking at this. The problem is you're not putting enough core attention on just the basic stuff of building up original content. Original content can make a huge difference. People don't get in love with a site like this, right? There's no loyalty. People don't come back to it. Think about the things that make people come back to a site. It's typically not a press release that's just thrown up on the web. Okay. Next up is Kathy Toth, who is a real estate agent in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Now, there's some interesting stuff going on here. She has original content, in fact, quite a lot of original content, but she's also part of a sort of real estate network, ProStep Marketing. And they basically step out from the ordinary, we'll make your realtor site step out, and look different than anybody else's. The problem is, it doesn't really look all that different. In fact, if you look here and view sample analysis, it goes to marketsnapshot.info. And you look here, you guys see yesterday Google announced the Google Font API and Google Font Directory. Really, it's a good idea to put text in actual text, not in images. Because here's the text, Ann Arbor Real Estate Experts, and there's no way for Google to see it because it's embedded in an image. So we have said, why don't we crawl the entire web and run OCR on all images on the entire web, right? And be like, that says Ann Arbor Real Estate Experts, so we'll help Kathy Toth. We will add that text to the page. But we haven't done that yet, and the web is pretty big. So I don't expect us to do that anytime soon. So in the meantime, that's the kind of thing that you can just put right on your page. You don't have to have it embedded in an image. There was also, this is a little bit strange. If you click on blog, it goes to AnnArborTalks.com. And I just want to drill this point home again. Okay, so here's a listing of a real estate site. This is supposedly a blog. Ann Arbor foodies want to get fresh at the produce station. It turns out this content is not original. It appeared somewhere else first. This one I love. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's an application to marry my daughter in Ann Arbor. Okay? And it starts out pretty simple, like Boy Scout rank and badges, tattoos, earrings. It gets down to, in 50 words or less, what does "don't touch my daughter" mean to you? In 50 words or less, what does abstinence mean to you? All right? So I swear all of this is truthful, otherwise water torture, red hot poker, and the Hillary Clinton kiss torture. I kind of missed that until now. Okay, so number one, this is amusing. You want your blog to show your human side, but there's such a thing as too much information, right? If you happen to be in a blue state, the Hillary Clinton kiss torture, that might be a little offensive, right? So it's a delicate sort of needle to thread. You want to show a little bit of your human face, but you don't want to be like, I think Hillary Clinton sucks, and then you fall off the edge, right? So ask yourself, is this the right place for my professional blog? Maybe you want to have a personal blog. Maybe you want to do this on Facebook, somewhere a little more private, something like that.
I have a minor point that I don't know if you noticed about the site, is she had said that she has a web design firm that's good at SEO. Mm-hmm. But I noticed that at the bottom of the page, her web design firm links to themselves for different times with keyword-rich anchor text. Yeah. So they perhaps are good at SEO for their own site.
Yeah.
But I mean, you really want to watch for that, is you don't want whoever does your website to use your site as a link farm back to their site with a bunch of different sets of keywords. Yeah. And not that this is a link farm, but 4 links to them in the same little block of text seems a little bit suspicious.
Yeah. It's a little bit overboard to say powered by pro-step marketing, real estate web design, real estate marketing services. What are you really doing? You're really giving your anchor text, your page rank, to the person who made your site. And it should be your site. And so to the extent that if some of this is a little bit cookie cutter, you have to be a little careful about that if they end up just making a ton of sites. And by the way, a lot of these individual resources, whenever you click through and do searches and stuff, they tend to be other sites. So that's the sort of thing to be a little bit careful about. A lot of this is like mlsfinder.com. So you want the value on your site. You don't just want to be framing someone else's site, if that makes sense.
So Matt, can I point out one thing this person's doing really well?
Yeah.
If you go to maps.google.com and search for Kelly Toth, or Kathy Toth, sorry, in Michigan, Kathy is a very local business, basically a realtor, so she's got an owner-verified listing in Google Maps, which gets her some extra points for certain kind of queries that show up for people locally, and also gets a lot more information than, there's actually some good content there that isn't even on the website, so that's a big plus.
I just did a blog post maybe a month ago about local business SEO, and I talked a lot about ways you can optimize Google Places. So if you do have a local business, that might be something to check out.
Yeah. So many people get focused on, I have to be #1 for Ann Arbor real estate, right? They have a trophy phrase. They have one thing they want to rank for. I want to rank #1 for Android apps. I want to rank #1 for Viagra Online. Whatever you want to rank for. And the problem is people don't type that in. They type in thousands of different phrases. So instead of paying attention to the one trophy phrase that's the most contested, the most competitive, the hardest to rank for, look at what is in your server logs. Look at what people are already typing. A lot of the times you might check those keywords and you're on page 2. And if you put the phrases just once or twice more in a natural way, you can move up to page 1. And the points that these guys are making, which is a very good point, is that it's not just the web. You can make videos. You can make business listings. You can submit stuff to Picasso Web and Flickr and all this sort of stuff. You can participate on Twitter and Facebook, where a lot of traffic is these days. So it's not all about getting #1 on a particular phrase. It's about looking at where all the people are online and trying to go to them. Does that make sense?
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
You're saying you could check your server logs to see stuff you may rank on page 2 or 3 for, but I feel like there's a tool that shows you when you're ranking on page 2 or 3 and shows you the click-through rates on the search results, and I think we might have mentioned it even earlier at Google Webmaster Tools.
I don't want to oversell it, but yes, you can find out the kinds of things that you rank for. Google Analytics is also great for this.
It's especially great though when you're ranking on like the 3rd page or the 4th page, because you probably would never know that, and you might not even see that in your analytics. But it's really interesting information, I think, to see those, that those reports that show you that
Yep.
stuff. And that was launched well after I left, so.
Yep. So another person submitted the site called 4chan. I don't know if anybody's been to that. The comment was, how can I optimize this site which has fresh content? I hear 4chan does have fresh content. And keeps changing frequently, also true. Or is it a moot point? Dude, come on. You think we don't know about Moot? Moot's a cool guy. We're not going to look at 4chan because I don't want to get sued. So moving on. Sheesh. Okay. Okay, this one's great. SEOpackages.net. So we have a search engine optimizer. So we're going to give the secret to search engine optimization. Number 1, get a good hosting plan. Do not let your bandwidth be exceeded. I was all set to try to give constructive advice to this guy, right? And he's just, sorry, I'm not alive on the net anymore. So, okay, we'll move on. So make sure that you have good uptime. Oh, okay, do people want to do fun, evil, sort of spammy sites or more constructive, positive advice? More constructive, positive advice. Okay, good deal. And I'll check the wave. We'll get to a few of these questions too. There's not that many. There's only 5 questions on the wave right now. So if people want to submit, just do Google I/O sessions, go to the session, click on the wave, submit a question, and we'll start a little questions toward the end as well. Okay, so here's a question from AppBrain. It's really 2. One is they make extensive use of the Google Web Toolkit, and does that hurt their search results? And number 2, how do you get Google to recognize their sort of breadcrumb structure? Because you want that to show in the search results. So this is actually a really good question. Let's take Shoot You Lite. AppBrain is a very cool site. If you guys haven't tried it, I recommend it. So AppBrain has 15,000 results indexed. What does that mean? That means GWT, the Google Web Toolkit, is not really hurting them. And in fact, if you look at the sort of URLs that they generate, they're perfectly natural, good-looking URLs. You can use a period as a separator. You can use a dash as a separator. I would prefer a dash over an underscore because whenever you have 2 terms like, A_B, Google tends to index those as one term. If you have A-B, we'll index them as 2 different terms. And most people tend to type A_B, not A_B. So I wouldn't change your site if you've got something that already works for you. But if you're making a brand new site, I would use separators that are like dashes or periods or something like that. So the URLs are actually pretty good. Here's Shoot You Lite. GWT is not hurting you in this case, as far as I can tell. Now, there is a little bit of design advice for this site. If I'm interested in this app, am I going to be more interested in change logs, or am I going to be interested in user reviews? User reviews, obviously. So why are the change logs above the user reviews? There's no good reason for that, right? So just swap the order of those. Think about the layout a little bit. This, while interesting, is not really all that useful to people. So I'd put that more towards the bottom of the page. But it is doing a good job. It's having some normal text. It's got images. So AppBrain is doing a relatively good job of having all this sort of content, useful stuff right up front. Related Android apps, critical. Why is related Android apps critical? How are people finding this site? You're probably searching for one specific Android app, right? You land on it, and you're done. And you close the window, and you go off, and you start work. Or you see related Android apps, and suddenly you've lost half an hour because you're, oh, wow, Spacelight, I've never heard about that. Okay, wait a second, Bazooka Rabbit demo, and suddenly you've lost 40 minutes sort of surfing through all this kind of stuff. YouTube gets an incredible amount of traffic from its related videos. It might be more than from the homepage. So people come in on a specific video, and then, you know what? If they had the time to watch a 5-minute video of a cute kitten, maybe they have time to watch another 2-minute video of a dog on a skateboard. And then maybe they have time to watch another 7-minute video of something else. And before you know it, the whole afternoon's gone. Now, you as the developer want that whole afternoon to be gone on your site. So show these related contents, show these related apps.
Did you look at their meta description tag? Because the meta description tag, unlike the keywords tag that Matt was mentioning earlier, can be really valuable, particularly in the search results. When someone's skimming the search results to figure out which one to click on. And for this one, I would think if you're looking for a particular Android app, and you're looking through the search results, you might use the meta description to really figure that out. And they're just populating it based on the first part of the text from the page, which is good in that it gives them something that's unique for every page, but it causes everything to be sort of cut off oddly because it only takes a certain number of characters. So that meta description that shows up in the search result tends to be very awkward for users because it just randomly cuts off in the middle of a sentence. So as a developer, if there's a way, if you're going to automate that, try to automate it in a way that's a little bit more easy to read and usable.
So what do you really want? You don't want search rankings, you want traffic. And you don't really want traffic, you want conversions. So you really want interested users who are kind of pre-qualified. You have already said, this is what my site's about, and they still chose it. So here's Android lib, for example. The snippet is, Shoot You was developed by Camel Games, package name com.camelgames, Shoot You. That's not that handy, right? Whereas go down to AppBrain, and they're saying hand-drawing style physics game. That's pretty good. All you need to do is shooting the little guy to hit the star. Simple, we'll see who... It cuts off in the middle. Putting a little bit of work into trying to craft the right meta description, and you clearly have the text because it's on the main part of the page, can entice users to click more often. It is really worth the time to try to get a good meta description, especially if it's automatically generated like this. And it's not spammy, it's relevant. For each page, there's a different meta description. If you don't have a meta description, or you have the same meta description on every single page, we'll try to pick out the best part of the page to summarize the user's query. And we don't always get it right. A bunch of webmasters used to call them the ransom note style snippets. So we do a pretty good job of highlighting where the words are on the page, but if you give us a good meta description, we'd often prefer to show the good meta description. Now the second part of the question from AppBrain was, how do I get the breadcrumbs? This is what they're talking about. This is breadcrumbs. And I went ahead and I asked the team that worked on this, and the short answer is, make sure that you have the same sort of markup as everybody else, and then you have to be a little bit patient. Typically, it might take a month or more before a site gets processed and we realize that you have something that's amenable to breadcrumbs and we're showing breadcrumbs. So that's something to be aware of. They're working on making that faster. They hope that by about the end of this quarter, they'll be able to make that much, much faster. So if you can come up with something that's a relatively clear structure, then you might get a couple extra links. And sometimes this attracts more click-through than something like /app/comgames, stuff like that. Okay, let's move on to a new site. Okay, airportcarparks.co.uk. I'm just going to be really kind of snippy real quick, because I think a few people like the schadenfreude and some people like the constructive advice. If you have good text, don't hide it under a bushel. Check out this text. Oh man, oh man, oh man, oh, is this written for users? No, it is not written for users. Oh, right, okay, so right here is where I can tell you're scraping content, right? Because you didn't escape Britons correctly. Somebody typed Britons in Microsoft Word, which used a non-standard apostrophe, which went up on a web page, which someone copied, it showed up here, and now it's a question mark character. I know it's not the original content because they didn't put it up the right way. And in fact, if you search for this phrase, it appears on some other web page. So scrapers, there are lots of ways that you can spot them, and usually you can tell whether something is inorganic. Do these comments look organic to you? I don't know if you can read them. I'll read a few. F. Adams, R. Rushworth, D. Anderson, T. Quigley, and G. Foyles. Do most people sign their comments with G. Foyles? Usually they use either some weird handle like HackerLeet or their full name, right? Not D. Anderson. And it's a little strange, you know. Airparks for Gatwick Airport, Jet Parks for Manchester Airport. And did you notice they use 6 stars instead of 5? Right? You don't understand. 5 stars wasn't enough to convey how great these sites are. You need 6 stars to get across how this one goes to 11. Okay, so don't just reuse content. Just make up sort of things that look inorganic. Okay, back to constructive a little bit.
Although that is, okay, I know that was a scraper site, but the thing with the text scrolling at the bottom, now that I don't work at Google anymore, people sometimes are a little more honest with me than they were when I worked there. And I'll talk to people and I'll ask them, why do you have a bunch of text at the bottom of the page? Do you really think that this is useful for people? And they say to me, and they don't mean it in a bad way at all, they go, no, that's for search engines, because I heard that search engines like a lot of text on the page. And people really think that this is a good strategy, and they're not trying to spam necessarily. They just think that's the way to get enough content on the page for search engines to like it. So of course, what I always go back and tell them is what search engines want is the same thing that users want. And so that content has to be useful for the visitors to your site, for the search engines to value it as well. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, here's a quick one. Growinstyle.com. The question is, they have unfriendly URLs. How much is that going to hurt their SEO? So the URL is item.axpx, item ID equals 67. The fact is, if everything else on your site is pretty good, don't get that worried about your URLs. If you're making a brand new site and you can make it have keywords in the URL, not crazy stuffed, but like 3 or 4 keywords, like WordPress does, go ahead and do that. But don't beat yourself up or like do an 8-month project to completely change your content management system if you can't get exactly the URL that you want. Search engines work with the web as it is, and Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, Ask, all the big search engines try to cope with syntax errors, people that don't have keywords, spreckled all over their page, all that sort of stuff. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. If you can put a URL in put a keyword in the URL, it's good, but you don't have to go overboard, and you don't have to worry about it if you can't do it. It's a relatively quick one. Okay, jimdantana.com. This one's interesting because it's a little bit savvy and a little bit naive. On one hand, Jim Dantana is fighting for Ventura County. On the other hand, does anybody know where Ventura County is? Okay, a few people do. You're probably from Southern California. As I understand it, Ventura County is like near Bakersfield or something like that. What? Okay, hold on. Maps. Hold on. Okay. The mere fact that we can disagree about this is interesting. Okay, so the area code is 805. So if you do this query 805, area code Bakersfield. That's why I was saying Bakersfield. I apologize. So maybe the mere fact that we can disagree about this means put the address on the page, right? Nowhere on here does it have the address. It has a phone number. So that's the sort of thing you need to have on your page, because some people are going to type County Clerk, California, County Clerk, Santa Barbara, County Clerk, Bakersfield, wherever you are.
And this happens a lot with restaurants in particular, where they only put the address, but they don't put the city or the state, because they just, of course, I'm in Seattle. But you're not going to be found when people do restaurant in Seattle.
Yep. Here's one more trick. Now this text is again not text. If I click on this, check out the URL. It becomes default.htm. The easiest links you can possibly get to your website are your own links. Making sure that your internal links point to the same place that you want it is one of the easiest things to do. If you shoot yourself in the foot by saying, okay, I have default.htm, I have index.html, I have index.php, I have it without any of those, suddenly your page rank and your links and your anchor text can be divided 4 ways, and you might not rank. So there are simple ways to handle this. Just make sure that everything is consistent. You usually don't want to have extra stuff on the end. It just gets in the way of the mind of your users. If you can't get rid of it, there's a tag called Rel Equal Canonical, and if you just search for Rel Equal Canonical, it's incredibly simple to set up. All you do is you say, in fact, I'll use our help page about it. I even made a video, which I don't want to play. All you do is you say, where would you like this URL to point? For example, my canonical might be jimdantana.com/. That's it. So even though you might have these different URLs out on the web, if you can't fix it yourself, use Rel Equal Canonical, and you can sort of unite the page rank, the trust, the anchor text, all that stuff into one place. And that can make a really big difference.
Just to add to that, so they, like Matt was saying, they have the default, they have index, multiple versions of the homepage. They also have the dub version versus non-dub. It's a really common thing. You can just redirect one to the other.
So they've got 8 versions of their
Yes.
page.
All these combinations, dub, and default.
Right. You don't really want to be the octomom with your URLs. You don't want to have 8 different versions of your URLs out there. You want to have an only child. All your page rank, all your anchor text should be pointing to one place. Another thing is there are a lot of good things about this site. He's got testimonials, he's got text. If you click on this, it starts to play a really cool video of like, stuff's flying around and voting and, all sorts of cool stuff. I would argue this video would be a much better thing to show than this tired slideshow, right? Because I just happened to click on this, and I watched the video all the way through. I'm not going to watch this slideshow all the way through. So, think about your resources and your assets, and sometimes you want to match stuff up differently.
He does a good job in the title, though.
In
terms of primary election county clerk recorder in his name, even though he doesn't have.
So check out the title. Excellent title. This is the sort of title that works really fine. Vote June 8th, 2010, right? He's managed to get June and 2010 in. So if somebody searched for election or June 8th or 2010, he might show up for that. This is totally fine. None of this seems like keyword stuffing. It's a little on the long side as titles go, but he gets useful keywords in there, and nothing in there is at all spammy. So yeah, good point. Excellent title. Okay, so we can do a couple things. We can start to go into a lightning round. We can start to take some questions. Strong preference either way? Questions. Okay. Let me close these out like super fast. This guy also has duplicate content troubles. You can build a website on Google Sites. It is possible. Discount plus size dresses. As soon as you click, it's a JavaScript link and it goes to a completely different domain name. Why would I even bother?
The same dress.
Yeah.
It's impossible to buy the dress you like.
Give me the 2-in-1 dress. Where is it? I can't get it from this site. So make sure that you actually have the stuff. Next, Sprocket.com is pretty cool. It's a marketplace for open source tools. So if you want like an open source tool, you can pay $30, $50. Is Next Sprocket in the room? Maybe they're shy. Their question was, how can we get more links? The answer is come up with a cool idea. I think this is a cool idea. I might fund a couple Chrome extensions. So get the cool idea and then think about marketing it. Get it on Twitter, get on Facebook, submit it for a site review, that sort of stuff. We'll skip on that one. We don't need, we'll talk to Sarah Science later. Okay, let's do some, one last one. There is a trend where some people think that they need a lot of links. And so rather than develop the links out of merit or because your site is excellent, they think, I'll just take the shortcut. I'll just buy a bunch of links. That is really not a good idea. You tend to get links from sites like this, SyriaAlan.com. You get term life insurance quotes for free, banking, freshwater fish in aquariums, Nike football kits, cheapest hotel rates, Himalayan salt lamps to ease asthma. These are not really targeted, useful links. If a user lands on this page, they're not going to stay to read about the Himalayan salt lamps. So this is the sort of stuff that makes spam fighters see red. We want to find every single one of your backlinks. We want to go over them with a fine-tooth comb to see what's going on. This is the sort of stuff that you definitely want to avoid. So if you can, I would definitely stay away from this sort of stuff. Okay. Questions? We'll alternate between questions from the wave and questions from the mic. We'll sort of go back and forth. Please use one of the mics. Don't just shout out questions. And everyone's going to this mic. We have one over there, too. You were first, so go ahead.
Can you talk a little bit more about GWT and SEO?
Yeah, absolutely. GWT, the Google Web Toolkit, is a fantastic package because you can do like really fast interfaces. You can write your stuff in Java, compile it down to JavaScript. Historically, Ajax-y type stuff hasn't been that crawlable, right? Which is a real problem. Now, if you're just doing something like Adwords, Adwords is written in GWT whenever you're using that interface on the web. So you can make fantastic applications, but it historically hasn't been that crawlable. They've introduced a new standard, and Google supports it. I think Facebook is already adding this to some of their URLs.
And it's built into GWT now.
It is built into GWT, where basically, if you want something to be indexed, instead of just having the hash mark, you can do hash mark bang, an exclamation point. And that will tell search engines this URL can be indexed. So we're already indexing a lot of content from Facebook that's doing this. Anybody else that wants to use GWT, if you search
there's a little more to it than that.
Yeah.
Do you actually generate the page when you?
Yeah, you have to install a headless browser on your server to generate static versions of the pages when Googlebot comes. It's all documented, and it's actually fairly straightforward, but you do have to do a few things for it. But that does help your Ajax to get crawled that otherwise wouldn't be if you're using something like the Google Web Toolkit.
Yep. So if you search for crawl Ajax, you'll find a page like this, making your Ajax applications crawlable. And the rough idea is you want to introduce this sort of bang character. There's a few other things to do, but at least now it's possible. It used to not really even be possible. Good question. Okay, so let me take one question from the wave. Mayday. There were a bunch of people on webmaster forums like Webmaster World. They saw something go live that happened right around May 1st, so they called it Mayday. Mayday is an algorithmic change in Google search results. We were looking for higher quality sites, especially more towards long tail queries. And it's something that's been through rigorous evaluation. Every change that we do goes through a ton of evaluation. We do over 500 changes a year. So it's not a mistake. This is something that is going to go forward. If you've never heard of Mayday or it doesn't affect you, don't worry about it at all. But it is an algorithmic change. It's working where we're trying to find high quality sites and sort of show those a little bit higher, which means, unfortunately, that some sites show a little bit lower. So that's just a few seconds about Mayday. Yeah, question.
So I run a popular website that is currently, number one for our particular term. I got a lot of feedback from my users that wanted features. So I added the new features and I put the links to those new pages in the top level nav, and instantly I fell in the rankings.
Okay.
This happened during the busy time of my company, so I had to revert those changes, and I instantly went back to number one. So what is the best way to add new features to the site and not fall in the rankings?
Usually that doesn't happen. Usually just adding a link or two will make a big difference. Were you adding like 20 or 30 links?
No, I added about 3 links to the top level nav,
Okay.
and I fell to number 3.
Even though it sounds like a smoking gun, you put it here, it went down, you take it off, it goes back up.
Yeah.
Sometimes that still can be a coincidence. Because when you've got tens of billions of websites, you take stuff on, you take stuff down, things can happen. The other thing that sometimes happens is sometimes a site is down or down intermittently and they don't realize it whenever they're rolling out new code. Feel free to catch us afterwards to sort of show us the site, but normally just adding 2 or 3 links would not make that big of a
what
difference.
did it drop to? From
number
1 to what?
3.
To 3, and it was the same URL? It was the homepage in both cases?
It was the homepage, yes.
Yeah.
It can be that you're right on the cusp, and so you might want to make sure that if you're showing up number 1 for a particular phrase, maybe put that phrase once or twice more on the page somewhere else on the page, because if you're right at the hairy edge, then having that phrase one more time can make a difference. But normally adding just a link or 2 wouldn't make that much of a difference. So we'd be happy to look at the site afterwards if you want.
Okay, great.
Cool. Yeah.
I'd just like to know the small business blog that was referred to earlier.
The small business blog?
Oh, the blog post that I mentioned?
Yes.
Oh, so my site is 9byblue.com, and I did a blog post a couple weeks ago about local business, so you can find it there.
9byblue? Thanks.
Yep. And in fact, Vanessa is very fun to read. I like one of her posts. Microsites, a bad idea most of the time. It's sort of an underselling way to say don't make 500 different sites. Concentrate more on making one good site that has branding and stuff like that. It can be really handy.
Yeah, I have a question about domain extensions. It's tough to get good .coms. So I just wonder if you guys have, give preference over .com versus a .info, for example.
Always go with .info. Those are awesome.
No, I'm office mates with a guy named Amit Singhal. Amit basically guides the entire search quality team at Google. I work on web spam, so trying to catch the cheaters. He deliberately runs a .info. He's at singhal.info. So that we can't say, well, we don't know of any good .info sites. Well, here's one, So we try not to look at the TLD. There may be parts, automatically run parts within our system that say, well, we think this is a little bit better or that's a little bit worse. But that's going to be a small factor no matter what. Until recently, there was nothing like that. And there's no super duper hand boost for EDU or gov sites or anything like that. It's just people tend to link more to EDU sites and gov sites and stuff like that. So plenty, Matt Mullenweg, the creator of WordPress, his domain is ma.tt. And he still ranks number 1 for Matt, which really annoys me. I'm like number 8 or something like that. So he's just got so much value added to the web. So typically I wouldn't worry about it. If you can't get the .com, you can usually get .org, .net, .name. All these things can work pretty well.
I do think, though, that .info users tend to be a little suspicious because .info sites used to be free, right? So there's just a lot, there's more of a percentage of spammy info sites, and so some of your visitors might be a little hesitant, maybe.
Yep. Cool. So let me take a question from the wave. In google.de, I see more English results in the SERPs. SERPs stand for search engine result pages. Why do these sites rank so high lately? Is this done to promote the US economy? Sometimes people in Germany get a little angry at us. There are side effects when buying US goods online, so it's not good for users. So I think Google does a better job than most at localizing the search results. So for example, if I go to google.com and I type in bank, I get Bank of America, Wikipedia, bank.com, World Bank, Wells Fargo. If I go to, let's say, Australia, and I type in bank, I get Westpac, ANZ, Comback. If I go to google.co.uk and I type in bank, whoop, it'll say, did you mean bank? And I get Bank Fashion, Bank of England, Bank of Scotland, Barclays, right? So we actually do localize quite a bit. And we can localize even knowing that some of this stuff, for example, Lloyd's TSB is a .com, but we know that it's related to the UK. So we try to localize as best we can. If you have specific examples, feel free to point them out. So Torvald, if you want to submit the specific site that you think is showing up that shouldn't be showing up, let us know. We'll take a look at it. OK, question from the audience.
Hi, I have two very short questions. One of them is regarding accentuation in Spanish. So we have the issue in Spanish where, for example, the word pronóstico and pronostico are two completely different words with two completely different connotations. And and when I put the hyperlink with the accentuation mark in it, the way that Google reads it, I've seen with the fetch bot, is the ampersand I-O bunch of code at the end to make the accentuation mark, and I was wondering how we can work with this, correct this in any way.
Yep, absolutely. Punctuation is interesting because, for example, in Woodside, there's something called Cañada Road. So you have the, those sorts of things. And the trouble is, do you index it as Canada Road or Cañada Road? So typically what Google will do is we'll try to index it both ways. Not every search engine does that. For example, Ask, for a long time, didn't know how to handle anything except for ASCII. And I wouldn't claim that we get it right every single time, but what we essentially try to do is we index the text, and then if we think there are alternatives, then we'll index the alternatives as well, but with a little bit less weight. Now, I wouldn't claim that's perfect. There's ligatures, there's interpuncts, there's weird stuff out there on the web. We try to handle it as best we can, but I wouldn't say that we're perfect 100% of the time. So anytime you see something where you think something should be indexed and it shouldn't, those are a great example to tweet my way or show up on the Webmaster Forum and sort of point those out.
And we did a post on the Google Webmaster Central blog in late 2006, I believe. So it was from a really long time ago. And I wrote the post, and it specifically has Spanish as the example, and it talks about the different accents. And so if you go find that post, it goes through some specific examples of way different accents are handled. So you might find that helpful also.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me do a couple from the wave. Dash versus underscore, we already talked about that. How bad is it to have more than one H1 or no H1 on a page? We try to react to the web as it exists and index it as best we can. There was a study right at the beginning of the web, like in 2000, that said 40% of all web pages had a syntax error. Let me say that again, 40%. Now, if Google throws out 40% of the web because we say, you didn't close your table, what's that going to do to our search quality? Rip it out, throw it away, right? Because there goes 40% of your potential answers. A lot of great people on, student blogs, they're writing stuff by hand. They don't do it correctly. We still have to try to index that. So if you have an H1, great. If you don't have an H1, we'll probably handle you just fine. If you have all H1, your entire page is H1, then you might have a problem. There's no need for your entire page to be a headline. That's the equivalent of shouting at the entire audience. It's like all caps, right? So if you can avoid that, it's probably a good thing to do.
So if you have any comments on link shorteners like Bitly?
Sure.
My company using them more and more and kind of using them permanently.
Yep, absolutely. So URL shorteners are fantastic for things like Twitter where you really need the extra characters. What I would look for in a URL shortener is that it does a 301 or permanent redirect because that tends to pass PageRank. There are a few URL shorteners that don't. So I think
they
Danny...
use a 302 in some cases. That's what you want to watch out for.
Yes. There is a great... Danny Sullivan has a site called Search Engine Land. He's actually at this conference. And I think he wrote URL shorteners. He did a review of like 70 different URL shorteners. So you can actually see, whatever you do, please don't use tweet burner or whatever. Whereas the ones that use 301s tend to be a little bit better.
All right,
If you
We have 32 seconds.
If you can get away from using short URLs, long URLs are a little better because they don't break the web, all that sort of stuff. Really, the only reason to use a short URL if you're worried it might get truncated in an email or in a tweet, something like that. Can you ask a question in 15 seconds?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
What are your views of changing in Webmaster Tools the location for different seasons on an SEO campaign? Is that okay?
Changing SEO tools for?
In the Webmaster Tools?
Yes.
Change the location physically for different seasons on a campaign, on a web campaign.
So we have a tool in Google Webmaster Tools where you can say, I'm not related to the United States, I'm related to Peru, even though I'm a .com, or I'm related to Israel. It tends to be more of a do it once kind of thing. I would not set it per season, like, oh, it's fall, I'm related to Peru. Wait a second, it's spring, I'm back to Chile. If you can avoid that, I would probably avoid that.
Yeah, I would avoid that.
That's not a good idea. Okay, so we're out of time, but we will try to stick around if anybody wants to talk about their sites one-on-one. Thanks very much.